J. Warner Wallace is a cold case homicide detective who's been investigating cold case murders in Los Angeles County for over a decade. His work has been featured on Fox News, Dateline, and Court TV. Now, we join him as he applies his investigative skills to making a case for Christianity.
Now, you've been part of this series, and we talk about how important it is to get in the game. But a lot of what you're going to discover in this generation is that you have to have more than just the what is true. I find that with Gen Z high schoolers, which I spend a lot of time with high schoolers talking about Christianity, it's really about two whys for every what. Number one, what is your what? We know what's true about Christianity, what's true about God, what's true about Jesus, fine, but why do you think that's true? This is a generation that wants the first why. Why is this true? And a second why. Okay, fine, this is true. You have some reasons to believe this. Why should I care? That's the second why. I've learned to give two whys for every what. That's what we're going to try to do tonight. And that's why we're talking about how important it is to get off your rear end and learn how to answer the why questions. A lot of you in this room already have young people in your life who have walked away from the church. You already know them by name. A lot of you don't even realize that the kid sitting next to you has already walked away from the church, hasn't told you yet. You'll find that out when they go to college. We could actually respond if we know why something is true. So we're going to start with this beautiful nightstand. This is a nightstand that was in a room that officers were dispatched to this lady's house because her roommate found her dead in her bedroom. And our officers knew this lady for years because she was a heroin addict. So they came figuring, hey, it's just a matter of time, and this is what they discovered was her nightstand. Let me give it to you as a close-up here. So here are her heroin needles here, and here, the syringes. She also, though, would simultaneously smoke rock cocaine, and these are her rock pipes. If you do this long enough, bad things happen. So now that she's dead lying in bed right next to this table, what do you think the officers, when they got there, they figure, what is this? What do you think it is? Yeah, it's an OD, right? So they call the coroner's office in Los Angeles County. It takes a while for the coroner to get there. About an hour, more than an hour. They're just waiting in the room while the coroner is on his way. When the coroner finally gets there, he pulls down the blankets, and she has been stabbed to death. It's not an overdose. They didn't even bother to pull down the blankets. Why? Because they thought they knew the answer before they started the investigation. Presuppositions will get you every time. Don't presuppose you know the answer to the most important questions in your investigation. If you do, you're liable to either misinterpret something or to not even bother to pull down the blanket. The real question is, how do we know what is the most reasonable inference from evidence? Because this is the judicial standard. Do you realize I don't have to get beyond a possible doubt? I can't prove anything beyond a possible doubt. You don't even know anything beyond a possible doubt. I could level at a possible or imaginary doubt about anything you think you believe, anything you think you know. I'm aiming for reasonable doubt, and that's a lower standard. Did you know that? If I had to go to possible doubt, I couldn't convict anybody. I'm aiming at reasonable. But how do I know what a reasonable inference is from evidence? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. How do we get to reasonable inferences? So I'm going to show you a dead body. That'll help you to kind of figure this out, okay? So are you ready? Dead body, dead guy laying on the floor face down. He looks suspiciously like my son Jimmy, don't you think? Back when he used to work at Trader Joe's before he was a police officer. Yeah, I think he was just getting ready to go in the academy because he had to cut his hair. Now the question is, how do we know if this is a crime scene? It may not be a crime scene. We get called out to all kinds of death scenes that aren't necessarily crime scenes. There are 4 ways to die. How do we determine which way he died? Well, we make a list that starts with E, evidence. And on this side, we make a list of all the explanations. Right now, the only evidence we have in the room is a dead guy laying face down. Well, how do we explain dead guys laying face down? There are 4 ways to explain them. He might have died by some natural cause. He might have died because of some accident. He might have committed suicide. Or he may have been murdered. These are the 4 ways that people die. Given what we have so far, just a dead guy laying face down, which of these explanations can I cross out as unreasonable? Because remember, anything is possible. I'm only interested in reasonable. So can I cross out any of these so far? What can I cross out? Just yell it out. Suicide, well, okay, if he intentionally took too many pills, he would look like that. Heck, if I poisoned him with too many pills, he would look like this. If he accidentally took too many pills, he would look like this. If he had a heart attack, he would look like this. Do you see how right now I can't cross out anything? So let's change our scenario. What if he's a dead guy laying face down, but now he's in a pool of his own blood, center torso? Center torso, not around his head, around his torso. We can now add this to our list of evidences. Can I cross out anything now? Yeah, it's possible that he bled out somehow from center torso, but I can't even think of how you could do that. Maybe it's some rare medical condition, but it's not coming out of his mouth or his nose. This is center torso. So I think this is reasonable to cross out. But until I roll him over, I really can't cross out anything else, can I? Let's change the scenario. What if he is a dead guy laying face down in a pool of his own blood, but now he's got a big honking knife sticking out of his back? Would that change things, you think? I think it would. So let's put that on our list. Why are you guys laughing at a guy who's been stabbed in the back? I just realized that's kind of weird, don't you think? That's because we're in Corona, okay? Strange people. Okay. So what can I cross out now? Yeah, I mean, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but I don't think it's reasonable that he could accidentally back into this knife this way. So I'm going to cross that out. Now, it is low enough, though, in his back that even I could reach there. Yeah, you know, you see some crazy suicides because a lot of the suicides we go to, people are high when they commit suicide. You see some crazy things. So I'm going to leave this in right now. But what if I got there and it was a dead guy laying face down in a pool of his own blood, but now he's got multiple stab wounds? Would that change things? I think it would. They're in his upper back. So now, how do I explain that? I think this is kind of hard to explain by way of suicide. Would you agree? But let's make it even more clear. What if also, in addition to all of this, there were bloody footprints leading away from the body? Okay, now we are clear that this cannot be explained easily, unless, of course, it is a suicide. We have a good reason to believe it's a homicide. By the way, this is in the book, Cold Case Christianity. I wrote this up, and I drew it this way for you. This is what it looks like in the book. This is a process we use at every single death scene. It's also a process we ask jurors to use in every criminal trial. And this process is called abductive reasoning. Abductive reasoning, also known as inferring to the most reasonable explanation. Does that make sense? I thought, as a guy who was 35 years old, had never stepped foot in a evangelical church, nothing like this, really wasn't interested in going to church, not interested in things of God at all, but I was willing to go to church with my wife, and she wanted to go, so I'll go. There are guys in this room right now. That's why you're here, because your wife wants to come. That's usually more the case than the opposite. And that was me, happy to make her happy. Didn't have to be true for me to make her happy. But I thought, could I apply this same process to this story that these guys talking about the resurrection of Jesus? So I thought, okay, I can flip that script, right? I can take that approach and apply abductive reasoning. And by the way, Paul tells us this is worth doing because it's the most important single piece of evidence in the entire Christian worldview. If you're only going to try to demonstrate one thing to know if Christianity is true, this is it. Paul says if this isn't true, you've got no reason to hope for your own resurrection, no reason to hope for future resurrections, no reason to believe us at all because we have been false witnesses who have been lying to you all along. You're to be pitied. If you're going to examine one claim of Christianity, this is it. And you can actually use abductive reasoning to do it because you have some evidence and you have explanations for that evidence. Now, as an atheist, I would have said that there are only 4 things I would agree to as an atheist about Christianity. I would have said, number 1, I do believe that Jesus lived and that he was crucified. And I'm not a Jesus myther. There are people who think that Jesus is a myth. Really? Okay, we can talk about that later, but I mean, really, even Bart Ehrman, the skeptic, who is probably the biggest skeptic against Christianity right now, he at least would say, yeah, he lived. But the fact that he lived and was crucified and was buried means nothing. This could be true and Christianity could still be false. Because I could explain, lots of people have lived, are dying every day of crucifixion, and are buried. This does not make Christianity true. I also would have said that, yeah, the tomb was empty. Because if you want to end this thing in the 1st century, let me tell you how you do that. You get the body of Jesus and you drag it around town, okay? It's game over. They wanted to do that. But they couldn't do that because the tomb was empty. But by the way, this could be true, and Christianity could still be false, because I can explain the empty tomb a number of different ways. I also would have said that these people claimed to see the risen Christ. So what? All kinds of crazy people claim all kinds of things. This does not make Christianity true. In fact, all three of these things could be true, yet Christianity could still be false. Finally, I would have said, okay, I agree. These folks were willing to die for their claims. They were transformed by this experience in some way. But so there are people who are transformed by Oprah Winfrey. Seriously. You've been transformed by your AA group or whatever it is that transforms you people. Who cares? Doesn't mean it's true to be transformed by it. So I would have said all four of these things could be true and Christianity could still be false. And that's all I would give you. There was nothing else that's claimed by Christianity that I would even accept as an atheist. But I would accept these four things. But remember, I've got to explain those four things. I got to figure out, how do I explain those if Christianity is not true? And I would have said that there are 6 ways to explain these as an atheist. One to explain them as a Christian. So I'm going to list those here. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these with you. As a matter of fact, I did bring books, but I'm not here to sell you a book. I'll be happy to sign a book. We've got tons of books back outside. We'll do that later. But I'm going to send you this video. I just texted the link to Chuck, so you'll have the link on the page when they post this service next week. You'll have a link to download and get every explanation. We can't go through all those tonight, okay? I'm just going to give you kind of the top 3. Sound good? But I'm going to send you the video to download and keep of the entire thing. Yes, this is a class at Biola that takes me 17 hours to teach. Thank God we're not going to teach that tonight, right? So if you need evidence that there is a God, you just got it, okay? Because we could lock the doors right now and keep you in here for 17 hours. But we're not going to do that. Therefore, there is a God. Okay, here we go. Let's start at the top. Here are some of the explanations I would have used. What if they were just wrong and Jesus wasn't actually dead? Now, we talked about this last week with Lee a little bit, right? But I want to give you a detective's mindset, not some doctor's opinion. How do I know he wasn't dead as a detective? Well, I realized it, of course, reading Scripture. I thought at first, there's a good reason to believe he's not dead because he was crucified alongside 2 thieves. John tells us this. Yet when they came to collect the bodies, the 2 thieves were dead. They had to break their legs to make sure they were dead. They didn't break Jesus' legs. So how do you know he's dead? If he's just unconscious, then all you have is a resuscitation. You don't have a resurrection. But, of course, there is this little nasty indicator right here. Nobody could ever understand that expression. They pierced Jesus' side, and water came out. And the first people who read this, they're like, that can't really be water. It's got to be like a symbol of baptism or a symbol of the Holy Spirit, right? Because there'd be no reason for water to come out of his body. They didn't understand the science of death. How many of you in this room, and there are people always, who handle dead bodies? Raise your hand if you have to handle dead bodies as part of your job. Okay, I have to do that all the time. Not many, though. The rest of us in this room, we think dead bodies look like what we see on TV. That's not true. I can tell a body is dead from across the room before I even get up on that guy. Now, those of you who have worked dead bodies, you know this. But the process your body goes through to die is interesting. If you suffer trauma, like blunt force trauma, or you're in a car accident, or you've been assaulted, the first thing that will happen on your way to cardiac arrest is you will suffer what's called circulatory shock. Your organs will start to shut down to conserve resources. And if you have cardiac arrest and your heart stops beating, you will suffer one of 2 forms of pleural effusion. Pleural effusion is simply this. It is water that collects around your heart. That's called pericardial effusion. But if you stab that cavity, that chest part, you will not see a separation of blood and water. It's not quite as thick as this to begin with. And number 2, your heart is a rich depository of blood. So if you stab that, it's going to blood. But if you happen to die in an upright position, then you're going to suffer what's called pleural effusion, and that is water in your heart, in your lungs rather. That is different. If I stab your chest cavity. Now, John writes this, that he sees a separation in blood and water, and no church father who reads that 1,000 years thinks it's really water. There's no way. Why? Because they don't understand the science of death. If you suffer a cardiac arrest, you will see this kind of water. Now, it's possible that John's just clever. And he writes in this little-known scientific fact 1,000 years early because he knows no one's going to get it for 1,000 years. And when they finally get it, they're going to go, wow, this is really legit. I don't think he's doing that. I think he's just reporting what he sees. Now, I'm going to teach you something else about death, okay? That you might not know. But I know everyone. See, you give me a bad microphone. I know everybody else in the first century knew this. Even though you might not know it in the 21st century, people in the first century had to bury their own dead people. So like we don't grab, throw her over our shoulder and take her to the funeral home. Okay, we don't do that. We call the funeral home. Or if it's suspicious, we call the coroner. Okay, we don't touch dead bodies usually. That's why we have no experience of this. But that wasn't true in the first century. That's why you don't know what dead people look like. I'm going to tell you what they look like. You ready? I'm going to take you to the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. This is on North Mission Road in Los Angeles. It's a beautiful building, don't you think? And if you walk up these steps right here, and you walk through those doors, and you make a right-hand turn behind this window right here, see that right there? That is the Los Angeles County Coroner's gift shop. That's right. You can Google it online. Don't do it now, do it later. It's called Skeleton in the Closet, okay? Well, you can get this t-shirt that says, "Our bodies of work speak for themselves." Isn't that nice? Or you can get like a mouse pad that says, "We're dying for your business." Someone's dying for their business. Anyway, the point is, if you go downstairs, next building over is a big white building. In the basement of that building, those are the examination rooms. Now, I'm going to tell you something. They do not look like this. I don't know whose picture this is, but the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office is not this clean. It's just not. It's terrible. As a matter of fact, if you're going to find a homicide in Los Angeles County, all right, as a detective, you have to be present at the autopsy because the coroner's not going to testify at the prelim. You are. So I have to go to a lot of autopsies. And it doesn't look like this. Why? Because we do hundreds in the same room. There's like 6 tables. It's always busy. And there's a reason why these are metal with grooves. There's a reason why there's a grate down here. That's so you can wash them off. And when I started in 1988, these tables were wood. Think about that. Yeah, it stinks terrible. I used to have a suit that was just my autopsy suit. I would only wear it to autopsies because it smelled so bad. And inside this room, I'm not kidding, behind this, on the wall here, there's a sign that says, "No eating in the examination room." Yeah, like people are going to eat in here, okay? But what happens when your heart stops beating, 3 inconvenient things happen that you would know in the first century, even though we don't know it in the 21st century, and these are called the mortis triad. The mortis triad. First thing that happens is you start to lose your body temperature. Your body temperature drops because that hot blood is not coursing through your veins. So when we get up on a dead person, he's going to feel different. He's going to feel cooler to the touch. You might not think about that, but I doubt somebody taking Jesus' body off the cross is going to miss that. Also, now by the way, that's called algor mortis. The second mortis is that he's going to get stiff. It's rigidity, right? That's called rigor mortis. So if I'm in a cross position and I'm hanging there, it doesn't take very long before when I take off the cross, your arms aren't going to drop to your sides. Your arms are going to slowly return to your sides if you don't have to push them down altogether. The third mortis is probably the biggest giveaway. It's that if blood is not being pushed by your heart, it's going to get drawn by gravity. And that means that if you die on your back and I get there and I roll you over, your back is going to be discolored because all the blood's going to bruise your back. If I die in an upright position, your feet are going to swell and turn red. That is called lividity. Liver mortis. Now look, I don't know if you ever thought about this before, but these folks had to deal with this all the time because they're burying their own. You might think they could miss this. That's possible, but I don't think it's reasonable. Plus, we have that pleural effusion. I had to cross this out. But they could be lying about this. How many of you in this room seriously love conspiracy? Have we not had a conspiracy theory week this week or what? Are you watching the news? Now, some of you like conspiracy theories. I get it. They're fun to listen to, right? They're fun to imagine. Raise your hand if you like conspiracy theories, either in the movies or in books. So please raise a high. Come on, be honest, be honest. Don't lie. You're in church. Come on. Keep your hand up for a second. So if you really like conspiracy theories, would you just wave your arms back and forth like this? Okay, these are all the stupid people in the room. Just so you know. You think a bunch of successful conspiracies happen all the time? Really? If you think you know of a successful conspiracy theory, it wasn't successful by definition. If it's successful, you don't know about it. Think about that. So maybe there is, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. How many, do we have any young people in the room who are like siblings? Raise your hand if you're sitting here with your brother or sister. Raise your hand. Okay, over there you're sitting with your brother and sister. How many do you have in your family right now? Just 2 of you? How many siblings are there altogether? Just 2? Anyone who has like 3 or more siblings together, raise your hand. Are they in the room with you right now? Okay, you have one. You have 2 siblings at least, right? In the way in the back there with the hat on. Okay, have you ever wanted to lie to your parents? You have? Oh, good man. I'm going to teach you with your siblings how to lie to your dad. I'm going to teach you how to form a conspiracy, because I'm going to tell you something, I get to work conspiracies all the time. If you want to pull off a conspiracy, you need these 5 things. So listen up. I'm going to teach you how to lie to your parents. Here we go. First thing you need is the smallest possible number of co-conspirators. It's easier for 2 people to lie than it is for 22. Make sense? So number 2, you want to keep it for the shortest period of time. It's easier to keep a lie for a week than it is for a year. So let me give you the best advice I can give you right now. Lie to your parents. Only pick 1 sibling to lie to your parents with. The minute you lie to your parents, go in the other room and kill your sibling. No, I'm serious, because then it's over. It's a short period of time. Does that make sense? It's really hard to break that conspiracy if your sibling is dead. If you don't want to kill your sibling, I got other advice I can give you, okay? Third thing, if you're not going to kill your sibling, is you want to have excellent communication between you and your sibling who told a lie. Because why? Because one of your parents is going to jam you up. And he's going to say, hey, dude, what's going on here? And you're going to have to give that parent a story. And your story is going to have to match your sibling. And by the way, you're not going to cover every detail before you do this. So you need to be able to communicate with your sibling to tell him or her everything you told your parent. Excellent communication is what keeps conspiracies. Why is this? What's the first thing detectives do when we got 2 suspects or more? We separate them. Why are we doing that? There you go. Get rid of the communication. We have to deconstruct the conspiracy. Make sense? Fourth thing. You want the strongest familial relationship. So right now you've got 1 brother and 3 sisters. I have 6 brothers and sisters, okay? 3 boys, 3 girls. Then there's me. I will tell you, if you're like most families, you got one of those siblings you really like. The other 5, not so much. I could take them or leave them. Really, you know what I mean? Take them or leave them. So you want to do the conspiracy with the one you really like, who really likes you. Because that person's less likely to cave. Make sense? Last thing, avoid pressure from your parents. Hey, if your parents aren't asking any questions, this can go forever, okay? Now, why do I tell you these 5 things? Because if you're going to say that you think the disciples of Jesus formed a conspiracy, fine, they need those 5 things. And already, the group is too big. It's not these just, James and Peter and John. It's not even just the 12. Acts 1 says in the upper room there were 120 when they replaced Judas with Matthias. Paul says in Acts 15 that there are 500 who are still alive who had seen the risen Christ. Think about that. 500 plus people are keeping it. You want me to believe that I'm already out? It's hard to keep a conspiracy 500 deep. But let's play a game of Clue. Here's our clue board. This is old school Clue, okay? Back the way it should. Yes, please, give me a hand over. Yeah, this is the way it should be played. I am going to change the board, though, a little bit. This is the board around where Jesus did his ministry, okay? The game pieces will simply be the disciples. Already, if you ask me, there's too many of these guys. But how long do they got to hold it? Right? I mean, if you can hold it for just a short period, is it 6 minutes or 6 hours or 6 days or 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years? No, it's 6 decades. You want me to believe that 500 plus people kept a secret for 6 decades? Yeah, no. Now look, I mean, it could be that they, had great communication. They're not in this holy huddle, okay? They are all over the game board. So how is it that Thomas in India knows what Matthew is saying? How does Matthew know what Paul is saying? You don't think they're doing what we do to all detectives? You do the same thing, right? Dude, give me the truth. Your buddy Matthew's already confessed to the whole thing. Paul's drinking margaritas. Come on. Just tell me the truth. Now, you've also played Clue, right? You've played Clue, and there's these other game pieces for Clue. Are they under any pressure? Yeah, I think so. Have you ever watched Jack Bauer in 24? The original 24? Jack Bauer. What would Jack Bauer do to get a confession? Whatever it takes. That's what was happening to these guys. They're being drawn and quartered and boiled and hung upside down and crucified upside down and tortured. I don't know. This to me doesn't seem reasonable. Now, are there some brothers? Yeah. Right? I mean, there's this is Andrew and Peter and James and John. And who's this guy over here, though? This is Matthew. This guy is not even part of the friends that were hanging out with John the Baptist. A lot of these guys were buddies of John the Baptist, okay? And they knew each other at least. This dude does not know any of these guys. This guy's name is Levi. He's a tax collector, okay? He is the last guy in. Nobody even wants him to come in. Yet, when all this stuff starts to break loose, he stands firm. He writes one of the earliest Gospels. Man, I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, this is just way too easy to break. If you know anything about conspiracies, and if you've ever investigated them, you know this is not a reasonable inference because these guys never changed their story. When people change their story, there's a good reason to believe they aren't telling you the truth. We talked about this earlier. The Book of Mormon has 3 people who are on the inside page of the Book of Mormon who allegedly saw the golden plates of Joseph Smith. David Whitmer, Oliver Cowdery, Martin Harris. Those 3 guys were either chased out of the church or voluntarily left the church. Martin Harris was a member of 6 denominations of Christianity after Mormonism. If people are willing to abandon their claims, there's a good reason to believe they're lying. These guys never abandoned their claims. That's important. So is it possible? And by the way, I always say it's possible. Anything and everything. Is it possible they're lying? Of course it's possible they're lying, but it's not reasonable. And that's what I'm after. I'm after reasonable, not possible. Last thing we'll go through tonight is this. Maybe they just imagined this. Maybe they just, after all, they didn't want Jesus to die. They really desperately wanted him to be alive. And if you want something bad enough and you're by yourself, you might imagine anything. So perhaps they imaginated this out of their strong desire for Jesus to be alive. Look at Mary. She's by herself, right, in the tomb garden. She thinks she sees the gardener. No, it's Jesus. No, Mary, it's the gardener, you knucklehead. You just want it to be Jesus. I get that, but you're by yourself. Look at Peter. Peter probably wanted the same thing. I mean, he had denied him 3 times. You got at least 2 scenes here where he appears to be by himself. Maybe he just imagined this. He had a strong desire for it to be true. James is the same way, right? James got at least 1 episode where he's by himself. He wanted it to be true. But then it gets weird. Because the other guy who sees Jesus by himself is a guy named Paul. And I'm thinking Paul doesn't want Jesus to be alive. Yet he sees the same thing. Then it gets weirder. Because then we get places where 2 or more people see the same thing. Look, if I told you I had a dream last night, I'm driving down Mulholland in a Tesla, and you said, yeah, it was a red Tesla. How do you know that? Had the top down, beige rag top. That would freak me out, okay? Because nobody knows your dreams. We don't have group dreams, okay? Yet here we have at least 2 people who see the same thing and report this for years afterwards, the 2 guys on the road to Emmaus. Here we have 7 who see Jesus at the same, 3, first of all, the Marys, right? How many Marys are there? Well, we got 3 here in Matthew 28. Are they having a group dream? Are these guys having a group dream on the Sea of Galilee when they're fishing and they see Jesus? I can't even get them all on the same screen. I'll try to get most. There you go. You got 5. There's 2 more over there. Okay? Just so you know, they're over there. But how do I explain this kind of group dreaming thing? Remember, I got the 12 apostles minus Judas, minus Thomas. That means we got 10 in the upper room. They all report the same thing. Then, Thomas comes back and joins them. So now we got 11 who see Jesus on the same day. Group dreams? I don't even know how many are on the top of the mountaintop. It says disciples. This could be just the 12. It could be the 12 plus the larger group. We don't know. But at least 12 saw him on this day. This is my favorite of all of them, the ascension of Jesus. Now let me ask you this. If Jesus didn't die on a cross at all, didn't die on the cross, and he didn't rise from the grave, if all he did is at the end of his teaching time, he ascended into heaven, wouldn't that be enough for you? This alone would be enough for me. If you saw, I guarantee if we all were here today and we saw Jesus ascend into heaven, we would go, I'm in. That's good enough for me. You want to see it? You want to see it right now? I can remove all doubt in the room right now. You ready? You want to see it? Yes or no? Oh, here we go. You ready? Let's count down. 3, 2, 1. Whoop. There he goes. Okay. There should be no skeptics in the room now. You've all seen it with your own eyes. At least 11 saw that. And then, of course, Paul says to the Corinthian church in 1 Corinthians, Paul says, "For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scripture. He was buried. He was raised on the third day according to the Scripture. He appeared to Cephas, then the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brethren at one time, most of whom remain until now, but some have gone asleep." 500 people at the same time saw the risen Christ. You can almost count them all. There you go. Add those. We're good to go. 500 people? Think about it. How do I explain? By the way, if you weren't sure of this, if you thought, oh, that's just you're imagining this, you just want Jesus to be alive, that's why then it's easy to it's an easy way to verify or reject this. Simply run back to the tomb, because if this is just an imaginary vision, Jesus' body will be in the tomb, but it's not. The tomb is empty. That's the problem. This is why Peter says, hey guys, we're not making this stuff up. This is not a clever story. This is just what we saw with our own eyes. Hey, take it or leave it. This is what it is. We saw this. We were eyewitnesses of his majesty. Now, I can tell you, if we had a little more time tonight, I would go through the other 3 here, but I'm going to put that on a link that you'll have posted on the webpage with this video at the end of the week. Sound good? So you'll get that. But that's fine. Good. Now we're going to jump down all the way to the bottom, because this explanation right here, this one is you Christians. Now I want to tell you, I learned this a long time ago working cases. Every explanation offered by a prosecutor or by a defense team has both strengths and weaknesses. Strengths and weaknesses. These can do some things well, but they also don't work for other reasons. I think the weaknesses outnumber the strengths. But don't think for a second that your explanation doesn't have a weakness. It does. It was a deal killer for me. Now, I will grant you this. The idea that the disciples are just telling us what is true, what they actually saw with their own eyes, it is the strongest explanation for the 4 things we started with. This explanation does explain those 4 minimal pieces of evidence better than any other explanation. I'll give you that. But it has a problem, especially for me as an atheist. As an atheist, I was a philosophical naturalist. In other words, I believe that everything in the history of mankind and in the history of the universe can be explained with just space, time, matter, physics, and chemistry. Space, time, matter, physics, and chemistry. I do not believe in miracles. I do not believe in supernatural things, ghosts and demons and angels and anything immaterial. I didn't believe in that stuff. Yet you're trying to tell me that your explanation is the most reasonable. Really? It requires a resurrection. No, that's not a reasonable explanation. That means something supernatural had to occur. I don't believe in the supernatural. If you can't explain it with space, time, matter, physics, and chemistry, you can't explain it. Now, but think how stupid that really is. What are we really investigating tonight? What we are investigating is this claim. Is it ever reasonable to infer that something supernatural like a resurrection could occur? That's what we're investigating. No, I would say, because I don't believe in supernatural things like a resurrection. No, you moron. That's the thing we're investigating. You can't start off thinking you know the answer to this. Right, okay, I get it. You don't like, okay, put down the shelf for a second. Let's just go through the evidence and see if it's reasonable. Don't start off thinking, no, I reject anything supernatural, therefore I'm not going to pay attention. Because if you do that, I can present you with evidence, and I've written a whole book on this, where I can present you with the earliest historical evidence for Jesus. You will find a way to jump over that if you reject supernatural things out of hand. And I can show you other pieces of evidence, like how often it's quoted by non-Christians in the first century. Yeah, you'll find a way to jump over that too. Why? Because you are committed to your naturalistic perspective. And then no matter what I provide for you, you will find a way to jump over it again and again and again. Why? Because you are committed to this end. Why are you committed to that end? Because that's where you began. And you refuse to move. Well, if that's the way we're going to do this investigation, guess what? We're never going to get anywhere but where we started, because you won't go anywhere except where you started. There's a reason why I showed you this nightstand. These guys were committed to their conclusion before they started the investigation. They didn't even bother to start an investigation. Seriously? This is why what you presuppose, your bias before you begin an investigation, will be your undoing. I teach you 10 things in cold case about working investigations. Number 1, don't be a know-it-all. Don't think you know the answer before you start. You won't get anywhere. Look, when it comes down to this issue of Jesus, there's only one of two options, and here they are. Either Jesus rose from the dead or he didn't. That's it. Now, if you had said to me, Jim, you need to consider this because this is a reasonable inference, well, that means I'd have to open my mind to all explanations, including supernatural explanations, and nay, I will not do that because I don't believe in supernatural things. This was a roadblock that stood between me and this inference. Are we clear? But as I looked at all the natural explanations that are offered by atheists, the ones that I held for all those years, none of these work. None of them work. Now let me ask you, look at this path for a second. Which of these two trails is least encumbered? I got all these problems here, only one over here. And guess what? I put that there. This does not need to be there. I could easily take it down. Oh, no, I don't believe in supernatural things. Well, wait a minute, but remember, you can't say that to start. You have to wait till you get to the end of the investigation before you say that. Can you put it down? Do you realize I was an atheist who did not believe in extra-natural things? Yet, I was also somebody who believed that the Big Bang cosmology, the standard cosmological model, was true. In other words, I believe that the science, and today I still believe this, the science demonstrates that the entire universe came into existence at a point in the distant past. That the universe is not eternally old, that it is a finite universe, and that all space, time, and matter did not exist until the universe existed. That is the conclusion of science, not of theology. That's why it's still called the standard cosmological model. Hear me. All space, time, and matter came into existence from nothing. No, there wasn't a spatial void and then the universe. No. Space is not nothing. Space is something. There was no space before the beginning of the universe. Well, then what is nothing? It's what Aristotle says rocks dream about. Nothing. But that means whatever caused the universe to come into being cannot be spatial, temporal, or material. The first cause of the universe has to be outside of space, time, and matter. Do you realize that if there is a being out there that could cause the entire universe to leap into existence, I'm thinking that dude can walk on water. I'm thinking he could probably rise from the grave. This is small potato stuff. The most dramatic miracle of the New Testament is not in the New Testament. It's Genesis 1. Everything from nothing. So I realized, wow, I simply had to lay down my bias here. And if I did that, I realized that this was by far the most reasonable inference from evidence. At some point, I realized the only thing standing between me and the truth of Christianity was me. There are people in this room right now who are right where I was. And you thought, well, if I got to believe this blindly, I don't want any part of it. I don't blame you. You shouldn't want any part of it if it requires blind belief. This is what I call a forensic faith. Yes, I have unanswered questions. Every case has unanswered questions. You probably have unanswered questions. The question is, though, does the evidence trail lead you in a direction so you can take the last step across your unanswered questions and believe something that requires a step of trust but is evidentially reasonable? I want to invite you in if you aren't here yet. The same way someone invited me in after I had done this investigation, it wasn't hard to come in. There are people in this room right now who have not given their lives to Christ because they are not sure it's true, or they're not sure why they should. Look, Christianity works. That does not make it true. The fact that it's true means it has value in your life. Is it true? You've been coming here with your spouse, with your parents? What are you waiting for? Why are you coming? At least be intellectually honest. Get out of here if you don't want it. If it's not true, leave. But I think you know better. You actually know this is true, and you know we can actually make a case for this. Tonight is the night that you're going to step across the line. Really? You think there's no good reasons to believe Christianity is true? If that was the case, I wouldn't be standing in front of you. I'm not a Christian today because it works for me. It doesn't work for me. It's hard being a Christian. I wasn't trying to fix a broken life, fix a bad marriage. Susan and I were together for 18 years before either one of us became a Christian. Those 18 years were easier than the next 22. It's harder being a Christian than it is being a non-Christian right now in culture. Have you not figured that out yet? But I'm a Christian because it's evidentially true. And I have such a high regard for the truth that I would rather be in an inconvenient truth than in a convenient lie. Now, you probably know that the way to enter into this relationship with anybody is to start talking to somebody. You have no relationship with someone with whom you don't talk to. You have no relationship with people who you have not spoken to. So tonight, let's speak to God. If you're in this room right now, just follow me. I don't even believe in prayers to lead people to, but I get it. I want to just give you an outline. You pray your own words. You pray your own words right now and talk to God. I'll give you the outline, okay? But you don't need to, there's no magic words here. If you've been sitting with doubt tonight, we're done with that. Let's take a step together.
To hear more from J. Warner Wallace, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. For more information on this week's topic, visit youtube.com/coldcasechristianity with J. Warner Wallace. Thank you for joining us on this Cold Case Christianity broadcast.